The fall of the Seventh Fleet, the Galactic Hegemony, had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. Their ships were everywhere. Their soldiers had conquered 1,000 worlds. No species had ever defeated them in battle. No species had ever defeated them in battle. No species had ever dared to try. Admiral Vorath stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. He was old by his species' standards, nearly 400 years, and he had spent most of those years bringing death to anyone who opposed the hegemony. His skin was gray and rough like stone. His eyes were black and cold. He had no mercy in his heart because mercy was weakness, and weakness meant death. Today, his Seventh Fleet approached a small human colony called New Bizin. 400 warships followed his command. Each ship was massive, bristling with weapons that could turn cities to ash in seconds. The fleet moved through space like a swarm of metal insects, hungry and unstoppable. Vorath looked at the planet on his view screen. It was blue and green, covered with oceans and forests. 5 million humans lived there. They had built cities and farms. They had families and dreams. None of that mattered to Vorath. The hegemony wanted this sector of space, and these humans were in the way. His intelligence officers had told him everything about humanity. They were a young species, barely 300 years into space travel. They had only a handful of colonies. Their ships were small and slow. Their weapons were primitive. They posed no threat to anyone. "Open a channel to the planet," Vorath commanded. A moment later, a human face appeared on his screen. It was a woman with silver hair and hard eyes. She wore a simple gray uniform. Her name was Yuna, and she was the governor of New Bizin. "I am Admiral Vorath of the Galactic Hegemony," he said. "Your world now belongs to us. You will surrender immediately. Your people will serve the hegemony. If you refuse, we will destroy your cities and kill everyone on this planet. You have 1 hour to decide." Governor Yuna did not look afraid. This surprised Vorath. Most species begged for mercy when they saw his fleet. They cried and pleaded and promised anything. But this human woman just stared at him with calm, steady eyes. "Admiral," she said, "I must decline your offer. We do not surrender. We've sent word to Earth." Vorath laughed. It was a harsh sound, like rocks grinding together. "Earth is 3 weeks away. My fleet will destroy your world in 3 hours. Your message is meaningless." "Perhaps," Yuna said, "but we have made our choice. New Bizin will not kneel." The transmission ended. Vorath felt a small flicker of annoyance. He had expected fear. He had expected submission. This defiance was unusual, but it changed nothing. Humans were weak. Their stubbornness would simply make their death more painful. "Begin the attack," he ordered. "Destroy their orbital platforms first. Then burn their cities one by one. Leave the capital for last. Let them watch their world die." His fleet moved into position. The human defense platforms were pitiful things, small stations with outdated weapons. They fired at the hegemony ships, but their shots bounced harmlessly off the powerful shields. Within minutes, every platform was destroyed. Vorath smiled. This was too easy. Humanity was not even worth his time. He should have sent a smaller fleet. On the planet below, Governor Yuna stood in her command center. Alarms were ringing. Her officers were shouting reports. The situation was hopeless. They had no ships that could fight the hegemony. Their ground defenses could not stop an orbital bombardment. 5 million people were about to die, but Yuna was not afraid. She knew something that Admiral Vorath did not know. She knew humanity's greatest secret. 300 years ago, when humans first ventured into space, they had discovered a terrible truth. The galaxy was not a peaceful place. It was filled with predators. Empires rose and fell on the corpses of weaker species. The strong survived. The weak were enslaved or destroyed. Earth's leaders had faced a choice. They could reveal their full capabilities and challenge the existing powers. Or they could hide. They could pretend to be weak while secretly building something unstoppable. They chose to hide. For 3 centuries, humanity had played a role. They acted primitive. They kept their best technology secret. They let the galaxy believe they were harmless. And all that time, they were preparing, building, waiting. The colonies were not signs of expansion. They were tripwires. Any species that attacked a human world would trigger a response that would shake the galaxy. Governor Yuna looked at her communications officer. Has the signal been sent? Yes, Governor. The relay network is active. Earth has received our message. Yuna nodded. The signal had traveled faster than any hegemony ship could move. It had used technology that humans had kept hidden for generations. Somewhere in the darkness between stars, that signal was reaching its destination. And something was waking up. In the cold void of space. Far from any star, massive shapes began to move. They had waited in silence for 200 years. Automated systems kept them ready. Skeleton crews maintained their weapons. They were humanity's final answer to a hostile universe. The Shadow Fleet. 1,700 warships, each one built with technology the galaxy had never seen. They were black as night, sleek as predators, armed with weapons that could crack planets. For 2 centuries, they had hidden in the asteroid fields and empty spaces where no one ever looked. Now, they received the signal they had always known would come. A human world was under attack. The time for hiding was over. Deep in the fleet's flagship, lights flickered to life. Engines that had slumbered for years began to hum. Crew members who had trained their entire lives for this moment rushed to their stations. The Shadow Fleet was going to war. Admiral Vorath knew nothing of this. He sat on his command throne, watching his ships prepare to bombard New Bizon. He thought about how he would report this easy victory to the High Council. Perhaps they would give him another medal. Perhaps they would let him conquer more human worlds. He had no idea that his entire understanding of humanity was wrong. He did not know that the weak, primitive species he planned to destroy was actually the most dangerous thing the galaxy had ever seen. He would learn soon enough. On New Bizon, Governor Yuna looked up at the sky. Somewhere out there, beyond the enemy fleet, help was coming. She did not know if it would arrive in time. She did not know if her people would survive the next few hours. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. The galaxy was about to change forever. Ghost from the Black Captain Taiho had waited his entire life for this moment. He stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, the greatest warship humanity had ever built. Around him, officers worked at their stations with quiet efficiency. There was no panic. There was no fear. Everyone on this ship had trained for years. They knew exactly what they had to do. Taiho was 41 years old. He had been born in the orbital shipyards above Titan, Saturn's largest moon. His parents had been engineers who helped build the Shadow Fleet. His grandparents had been engineers too. For 3 generations, his family had dedicated their lives to a single purpose, preparing humanity for the war that everyone knew would eventually come. Now the war had arrived. Status report, Taiho said. His voice was calm and steady. Commander Myray stepped forward. She was his second in command, a woman of 30 with sharp eyes and quick hands. She had graduated first in her class at the Naval Academy. She could calculate jump coordinates in her head faster than most computers. All 1,700 ships are reporting battle-ready, she said. Slipstream drives are charged. Weapons are hot. The fleet is awaiting your orders, Captain. Taiho nodded slowly. 1,700 ships. It sounded like a lot, but the enemy had 400 vessels, and each hegemony battlecruiser was 3 times the size of a human destroyer. On paper, the humans were outmatched, but paper did not fight wars. Technology did. Training did. Will did Dot, and humanity had spent 3 centuries perfecting all 3. "Show me the enemy position," Taiho ordered. A holographic display appeared in front of him. It showed New Bizen and the hegemony fleet in orbit around it. Red dots represented enemy ships. There were so many of them, clustered together like a swarm of angry insects. "They've already destroyed the orbital platforms," Myray reported. "They're preparing for planetary bombardment. Estimated time until they begin, 47 minutes. 47 minutes. 5 million lives hung in the balance. If the Shadow Fleet did not arrive in time, New Bizen would burn. How long until we reach the system?" Taiho asked. 18 minutes at slipstream velocity. The slipstream drive. This was humanity's greatest secret, the technology that made everything possible. While the rest of the galaxy used warp drives that bent space slowly, humans had discovered something far more advanced. The slipstream drive folded space itself, allowing ships to travel vast distances in moments. A journey that would take the hegemony 3 weeks could be completed by human ships in hours. This single advantage changed everything. It meant humans could strike anywhere, anytime, without warning. It meant that no human world was ever truly alone. Taiho turned to face his crew. These men and women had given up normal lives to serve in the Shadow Fleet. They had lived in secret bases, trained in hidden facilities, and told no one about their true purpose. Some had not seen their families in years. They had sacrificed everything for this moment. "Open a channel to the fleet," Taiho said. A soft chime indicated the channel was open. His voice would now reach every ship, every crew member, every soldier in the Shadow Fleet. "This is Captain Taiho," he began. 200 years ago, our ancestors made a choice. They looked at the galaxy and saw what it truly was. They saw empires built on conquest and slavery. They saw a species destroyed for being too weak. They saw a universe where mercy was punished and strength was the only law. He paused, letting his words sink in. Our ancestors could have revealed humanity's true power. They could have challenged the hegemony and the other empires. But they were wise. They knew that a young species, alone against ancient powers, would be destroyed. So they chose a different path. They chose to hide, to wait, to prepare. Taiho's hands tightened into fists. For 300 years, we have played the role of primitives. We let the galaxy laugh at us. We let them call us weak and backward. We watched as other species suffered the fate we feared. And all that time, we were building, learning, growing stronger. He looked around at his bridge crew. He saw determination in their eyes. He saw pride. He saw the hunger of predators who had been caged too long. Today, the waiting ends. Today, the hegemony attacked one of our worlds. They think we are helpless. They think they can slaughter our people without consequence. They are wrong. Taiho's voice grew harder. Today, we show the galaxy what humanity truly is. We are not prey. We are not victims. We are the species that survived ice ages and plagues. We are the species that split the atom and conquered our own solar system. We are the species that looked at a hostile universe and said, "We will not break." He drew a deep breath. New Bizen is counting on us. 5 million of our brothers and sisters are waiting for rescue. We will not fail them. We will arrive like ghosts from the black. We will fall upon the enemy like a storm. And when this day is over, the hegemony will know fear. Taiho straightened his uniform. All ships, prepare for slipstream jump. We go to war. The channel closed. Around him, his crew worked with renewed intensity. The Indomitable hummed with power as its slipstream drive charged to full capacity. In the space around the flagship, 1,700 other ships prepared for the same jump. Their crews had heard Taiho's words. They felt the same fire in their hearts. They were ready to fight. They were ready to die if necessary, but mostly, they were ready to win. Commander Myray looked at Taiho. "Captain, the fleet is ready. Slipstream coordinates are locked. On your command." Taiho stared at the holographic display. In 18 minutes, he would face an enemy fleet that had never known defeat. He would command the largest human military operation in history. The fate of humanity might rest on what happened in the next few hours. He felt no fear. He felt only certainty. Humanity had prepared for this moment for 3 centuries. Every ship, every weapon, every tactic had been designed for exactly this situation. The hegemony thought they were attacking helpless colonists. They were about to learn how wrong they were. "Engage slipstream drives," Taiho ordered. "All ships jump." Reality twisted around the Shadow Fleet. Stars stretched into lines of light. Space folded like paper. And then, in an instant, 1,700 warships vanished from their hiding places. They reappeared 18 minutes later, surrounding the hegemony fleet like wolves circling sheep. The hunt had begun. The Battle of New Buzana Myrovorath was enjoying himself. His fleet had crushed the human defenses without effort. The orbital platforms were debris. The small patrol ships had fled or been destroyed. Now, his 400 warships orbited New Bizan like vultures waiting for a meal. In 30 minutes, he would give the order to begin bombardment. The human cities would burn. Millions would die. And the hegemony would add another conquered world to its collection. Vorath was already composing his victory report in his mind when his sensor officer screamed, "Admiral! Contacts appearing. Multiple contacts. They're everywhere." Vorath spun toward the sensor display. What he saw made his blood turn cold. Space itself was tearing open. Rifts of blue light appeared all around his fleet, and from those rifts emerged ships. Human ships. Hundreds of them. They materialized without warning, without the energy signatures of normal space travel. One moment there was nothing. The next moment, the hegemony fleet was surrounded. "That's impossible," Vorath whispered, but it was not impossible. It was happening. The human ships formed a perfect sphere around his fleet, cutting off every escape route. They were smaller than his battlecruisers, but there were so many of them. And something about their design sent fear crawling up his spine. These were not merchant ships. These were not patrol vessels. These ships were built for one purpose, only. Killing. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Captain Taiho surveyed the battlefield. The jump had been perfect. His fleet had emerged exactly where he wanted them, surrounding the enemy completely. The hegemony ships were trapped like fish in a net. "Open a channel to the enemy flagship," Taiho ordered. A moment later, he was looking at Admiral Vorath's face. The alien looked shocked. Good. Shock would slow his reactions. Shock would make him stupid. "This is Captain Taiho of the Terran Shadow Fleet," he said calmly. "You have attacked the human world. You have threatened to murder 5 million innocent people. I am giving you one chance to withdraw. Take your ships and leave. Never return to human space. If you refuse, I will destroy your entire fleet." He paused. "You have 60 seconds to decide." Admiral Vorath stared at the human on his screen. His shock was fading, replaced by anger. Who was this creature to threaten him? The hegemony had ruled the galaxy for 12,000 years. They had crushed species far more powerful than these primitive humans. "You dare threaten me?" Vorath snarled. "You have more ships, but we have superior technology. Our shields will stop your weapons. Our cannons will tear through your hulls. You are nothing but insects pretending to be warriors." He turned to his tactical officer. "All ships, open fire. Destroy them all." The hegemony fleet unleashed its fury. Plasma cannons roared. Missiles streaked through space. Energy beams lanced toward the human ships. The firepower was tremendous, enough to crack moons and melt asteroids. But the human ships were not there. They moved like nothing Vorath had ever seen. They did not simply dodge. They danced. Their maneuvers defied physics, impossible turns and sudden accelerations that should have killed their crews. The hegemony weapons hit empty space, where human ships had been milliseconds before, and then the humans fired back. The first volley from the shadow fleet struck a hegemony battlecruiser amidships. The alien shields, rated to withstand hours of sustained bombardment, collapsed in 2 seconds. The human weapons punched through armor like needles through cloth. The battlecruiser exploded in a ball of white fire. Then another ship exploded. And another. And another. Lieutenant Jiwoo commanded a destroyer squadron on the fleet's eastern flank. She was 28 years old, born on a small colony near Alpha Centauri. She had joined the Navy at 18 and had spent 10 years training for exactly this battle. Now, as she watched hegemony ships die around her, she felt tears streaming down her face. They were not tears of fear or sadness. They were tears of release. For her entire life, humanity had hidden. They had pretended to be weak. They had watched as alien empires pushed them around, laughed at them, called them primitive. Every human had grown up knowing the truth, but they could never show it. They had to smile and bow and pretend to be harmless. That pretending was over. Forever. "All ships, target the cruisers on the left flank," Jiwoo ordered. Her voice cracked with emotion, but her hands were steady on the controls. Fire at will. Her squadron unleashed a coordinated barrage. 6 hegemony cruisers tried to return fire, but they were too slow. Human targeting systems locked onto weak points in their armor. Human weapons struck with surgical precision. In less than 30 seconds, all 6 cruisers were expanding clouds of debris. Admiral Vorath watched his fleet dying. His tactical displays were a nightmare of red warning lights. Ships were vanishing from his formation faster than he could count. His captains were screaming for orders, begging for help, dying in mid-sentence as their vessels exploded. The battle had lasted less than 10 minutes. He had already lost 200 ships. How is this possible? He demanded. Their weapons should not be able to penetrate our shields. Their ships should not be able to move like that. His tactical officer shook his head in despair. "Admiral, their technology it's generations ahead of ours. Maybe centuries. Their weapons use principles we don't even understand. Our shields are useless. Our armor is useless. We cannot hurt them." Vorath felt something he had not felt in 300 years. Fear. "Sound the retreat," he ordered. His voice was hollow. "All ships withdraw. Maximum speed. Get us out of here." The surviving hegemony ships tried to flee. They fired their engines and ran for the edge of the system. But the human ships were faster. They hunted down the fleeing vessels like wolves chasing wounded deer. More explosions lit up the darkness of space. On the Indomitable, Captain Taiho watched the slaughter with cold satisfaction. The hegemony had thought humans were weak. They had planned to murder 5 million innocent people. They had earned this fate. "Let some of them escape," he ordered. "We need survivors to carry our message." Commander Myre looked at him. "How many?" 50 ships. "No more." The Shadow Fleet adjusted its attack. Human ships herded the fleeing hegemony vessels, destroying some and allowing others to escape. It was calculated, precise, terrifying. 14 minutes after the battle began, it was over. Admiral Vorath's flagship was one of the survivors. It limped through space, trailing smoke and debris, its engines barely functional. Around it, 49 other crippled hegemony ships fled toward home. Behind them, 350 ships burned in the void around New Bizen. The humans had won. The Admiral's last lesson, Admiral Varth, sat alone in his ruined command center. The lights flickered. Sparks fell from damaged panels. Smoke drifted through the air. His beautiful flagship, the Eternal Dominion, was now a broken wreck barely capable of movement. Around him, his surviving crew worked desperately to keep the ship alive. They sealed hull breaches. They rerouted power. They tended to the wounded and counted the dead. No one spoke to Vorth. No one even looked at him. He had led 400 ships in the battle. 350 were now debris floating in space. Around New Bizen, the greatest military disaster in hegemony history had happened under his command, and the humans had barely lost anything. Vorth's tactical officer had given him the final count before collapsing from exhaustion. The Shadow Fleet had lost 2 ships, 2 against 350. The ratio was so absurd that Varth would have laughed if he were not so terrified. His communications console beeped. Someone was hailing him. He already knew who it would be. Captain Taiho's face appeared on the damaged view screen. The human looked calm and rested, as if he had just finished a light exercise rather than destroyed an entire fleet. "Admiral Vorth," Taiho said, "I hope you are comfortable." Vorth said nothing. What could he say? He had been utterly defeated by a species he had dismissed as primitive insects. His pride was ash. His reputation was destroyed. His career was over. "I told you I would destroy your fleet if you did not withdraw," Taiho continued. "You did not listen. Now, 350 of your ships are wreckage. Thousands of your soldiers are dead. This is the consequence of your arrogance." Vorth finally found his voice. It came out as a croak. "Why? Why did you hide? If you had this power all along, why did you let the galaxy treat you like weaklings?" Taiho smiled. It was not a kind smile. "Because we are patient, Admiral. Because we understand that the universe rewards those who wait for the right moment. For 3 centuries, we watched the galaxy. We learned everything about every species, every empire, every military doctrine. We studied your weapons and your tactics. We found your weaknesses." He leaned closer to the camera. "And all that time, we were building. We were developing technology you cannot even imagine. We were training soldiers and commanders who have prepared their entire lives for this exact situation. You thought you were hunting primitives. You were walking into a trap that was 300 years in the making." Vorth felt sick. The hegemony had been fooled. Completely, utterly fooled. They had laughed at humanity. They had mocked their slow ships and weak weapons. They had never suspected that everything they saw was a lie. "What do you want?" Vorth asked. "I want you to deliver a message," Taiho said. "I am letting you live, Admiral. I am letting your surviving ships limp back to hegemony space. This is not mercy. This is strategy. I need someone to tell the High Council exactly what happened here." Taiho's expression hardened. "Tell them that humanity is not what they believed. Tell them that we have been watching them for 3 centuries. Tell them that we know the names of their admirals and the locations of their shipyards. We know their supply routes and their military bases. We know everything." The human captain's voice dropped to something cold and dangerous. "Tell them to leave us alone. Tell them that if any hegemony vessel ever again enters human space with hostile intent, we will not stop at defense. We will come for them. We will burn their worlds. We will destroy their fleets. We will tear down everything they have built over 12,000 years." Vorth's hands were trembling. "You would go to war with the entire hegemony? Admiral, look around you. Look at what remains of your fleet. You brought 400 warships to destroy a single human colony. In 14 minutes, I turned your fleet into scrap metal. A 14 metal. This was one battle. We have not even begun to show you what we can really do. Taiho stood straighter. The hegemony has two choices. The first choice is peace. Leave humanity alone. Do not attack our worlds. Do not threaten our people. Let us live in our corner of the galaxy, and we will let you live in yours. We do not want conquest. We do not want empire. We only want to be left alone. His eyes narrowed. The second choice is war. If the hegemony attacks us again, we will not simply defend ourselves. We will take the war to your homeworlds. We will strike your shipyards and your military bases. We will hunt down your fleets and destroy them one by one. And we will not stop until the hegemony is a memory. Vorath believed him. Looking into those cold human eyes, he believed every word. This was not an empty threat. This was a promise. I understand, Vorath said quietly. Good. Taiho nodded. Then go. Tell your masters what you witnessed today. Tell them that humanity is no longer hiding. Tell them to choose wisely. The transmission ended. Vorath sat in silence for a long time. His entire understanding of the universe had been shattered. He had spent 300 years believing that the hegemony was invincible. He had conquered dozens of species. He had never known defeat. Now he knew fear. Now he understood what it felt like to be prey. Set course for hegemony space, he ordered quietly. Maximum speed. His navigation officer looked up. Admiral, our engines are badly damaged. The journey will take months. Then we will take months. The High Council must hear what happened here. They must understand what we face. As his crippled ship turned toward home, Vorath looked back at New Bizon on the view screen. The human colony was safe. 5 million people who should have died today would live. And orbiting above them, the Shadow Fleet waited in perfect formation. 1,700 ships. All of them intact. All of them ready for more. Vorath had spent his life believing that humans were insects. Now he understood the truth. Humans were not insects. They were predators. The most dangerous predators the galaxy had ever seen. And they had been waiting patiently for someone to give them a reason to reveal themselves. The hegemony had given them that reason. And now, nothing would ever be the same. A new dawn. The news spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. On 1,000 worlds, beings of every species watched the footage in disbelief. Hegemony battle cruisers exploding like toys. Human ships moving with impossible speed. An entire fleet reduced to wreckage in 14 minutes. It was not possible. It could not be real. The hegemony was invincible. Everyone knew this. Everyone had always known this, but the evidence was undeniable. Admiral Vorath's surviving ships had returned home, and the crews told their stories. They spoke of weapons that ignored shields. They spoke of ships that moved faster than sensors could track. They spoke of a human captain who had promised to burn the hegemony to ash if they ever attacked humanity again. The galaxy had changed overnight. On Earth, President Suman stood before a crowd of billions. Every screen on the planet showed her face. Every human being on every world watched and listened. She was 70 years old, with gray hair and weathered skin. She had spent 40 years in government, working her way up from a small-town mayor to the leader of all humanity. She had known about the Shadow Fleet her entire career. She had helped keep the secret. She had prayed she would never have to reveal it. That prayer had not been answered. "My fellow humans," she began, her voice steady and clear. "By now, you have all heard what happened at New Bizon. An alien fleet attacked our colony. They planned to murder 5 million innocent people. They thought we were helpless." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. They were wrong. The crowd was silent. Every human being watching felt the gravity of this moment. For 300 years, our ancestors kept a secret. When humanity first reached the stars, our leaders discovered a terrible truth. The galaxy is not a peaceful place. It is filled with empires that conquer and enslave. Species that cannot defend themselves are destroyed. Mercy is seen as weakness, and weakness means death. Suman's expression hardened. Our ancestors faced an impossible choice. They could reveal humanity's true capabilities and challenge powers that had ruled for thousands of years. Or they could hide. They could pretend to be primitive while secretly building the greatest military force the galaxy had ever seen. She spread her hands. They chose to hide. They built the Shadow Fleet in secret. They developed technology centuries ahead of anyone else. They trained soldiers and commanders who have spent their entire lives preparing for war. And they waited. They hoped that humanity would never be attacked. They hoped a fleet would never be needed. Her voice softened. That hope ended at New Bizen. But a new hope begins today. President Suman straightened her shoulders. I speak now not only to humanity, but to every species in the galaxy. We are not conquerors. We do not want empire. We do not want to rule over others. All we have ever wanted is to live in peace, to explore the stars, to grow and learn and build. Her eyes hardened. But we will not be victims. We will not bow to tyrants. Any species that raises a hand against humanity will face the full power of the Shadow Fleet. We have 1,700 warships, each one more advanced than anything the galaxy has seen. We have technology that your scientists cannot even comprehend. And we have the will to use them. She leaned forward. Choose wisely. In orbit above New Bizen, the Shadow Fleet held formation. Captain Taiho stood at a viewport on the Indomitable, watching the planet turn slowly below. The blue oceans and green forests looked peaceful from space. It was hard to believe that this world had nearly been destroyed just hours ago. Commander Myray approached him quietly. She held a datapad with casualty reports and damage assessments. Final count, she said softly. 2 ships destroyed. 47 dead. 12 ships damaged but repairable. 47. In exchange for 350 enemy vessels. It was the most one-sided victory in galactic history, but Taiho did not feel like celebrating. 47 people had died under his command. They had families who would never see them again. They had dreams that would never be fulfilled. They died well, Taiho said. They died protecting their people. Make sure their families know that. Make sure their names are remembered. Myray nodded. It will be done. She hesitated, then asked the question that everyone in the fleet was asking. What happens now? Taiho considered the question carefully. The battle was over, but the war had just begun. The hegemony would not accept this defeat quietly. They would gather their forces. They would seek revenge. Other empires might see humanity as a threat and strike first. The galaxy had been turned upside down. Nothing would ever be the same. Now we prepare, Taiho said slowly. We strengthen our defenses. We build more ships. We train more soldiers. The hegemony will come back eventually. They have too much pride to accept defeat. When they do, we must be ready. He turned from the viewport and met Murray's eyes. But we also show the galaxy who we are. Not just our strength. Our character. We help species that need help. We protect those who cannot protect themselves. We prove that humanity is not just powerful but good. Myray smiled slightly. You want to be the opposite of the hegemony. I want humanity to be what the galaxy needs. A force for justice. A defender of the weak. The hegemony ruled through fear. We will lead through example. It was a grand vision. Perhaps impossible. But looking at the fleet around them, at the ships that had just proven humanity's power. Taiho believed it could be done. On the surface of New Bizen, Governor Yuna stood in the capital city. Around her, people were celebrating. They danced in the streets. They hugged strangers. They cried with relief and joy. Above them, the wreckage of hegemony ships fell through the atmosphere, burning up like shooting stars. Each streak of light represented an enemy vessel that would never threaten anyone again. Yuna thought about the humans who had come to save her world. She thought about Captain Taiho and his fleet, arriving just in time. She thought about the centuries of preparation that had made this victory possible. Humanity had hidden for so long. They had pretended to be weak. They had endured mockery and threats and fear. But today, everything had changed. Today, humanity had stepped out of the shadows. Today, they had shown the galaxy what they truly were. Not prey, not victims. Predators. And as Yuna watched the burning debris fall from the sky like stars, she knew one thing with absolute certainty. The galaxy would never underestimate humanity again.